Pushkin.
From BBC Studios and Pushkin Industries, this is Big Lives. I'm Kai Wright.
I'm Emmanuel Dzotsi.
And on this show, we take a single cultural icon and break down their life and their impact using the BBC archives. And Emmanuel, today we are talking about the one and only Little Richard.
Okay, I'm so excited about this because I know so little about this man. And I feel like I should know more about this man.
All right. Well, what is your kind of stock image of him?
Oof. Honestly, my stock image of him is of this just very effervescent, super charismatic performer. Someone who, I don't know how to say, I don't know if it's because of one of his most famous songs, Tutti, Frutti, but I just think of a very out there with a bunch of makeup and his hair done up in a silk scarf. Just a total character.
Your stock image is exactly correct. And it's a man like this song. Boom. I remember singing that as a little kid. So that's the other thing I would say at this stage in history.
Yeah.
He's probably the kind of thing you play at a kid's party, right?
For sure.
Well, all right, so to lay down the basics of Little Richard, this is, despite being somebody who plays at kids' parties now, or who you would play at a kids' party now, is in fact one of, if not the most crucial architect of rock and roll.
Right.
First with that song, Tutti Frutti, released in the late 50s, followed up with stuff like Long Tall Sally and Rip It Up. On Saturday Night Just Got Paid is one of the lyrics in Rip It Up. He has this really distinctive style that you are familiar with. Big bouffant hair. The pancake makeup is really important. You weren't supposed to miss the makeup. You were supposed to see him in his pancake makeup. Flamboyant costumes, all of it. And actually, Little Richard, I think is the best person to introduce Little Richard.
Okay.
So let me just play you a little clip from what he did during a BBC interview I found in 1972. The interviewer's trying to talk to him, and he just interrupts him.
Could I say something?
Go ahead.
Let it all hang out with the beautiful Little Richard from down in Macon, Georgia. I am the king of rock and roll. Ow, ow, ow. My. I just had to do that. Now I feel so much better. I got it out.
Wow. He's one part preacher, one part just flamboyant diva, basically.
All of this is going to be relevant. You are using all the right words. Effervescent, charismatic, preacher, flamboyant, diva, are probably the best 5 words to describe Little Richard. So that clip is him in a nutshell. And like I said, today, it is uncontroversial to say that he was the king of rock and roll. Countless rock and roll legends have followed his sound, starting with Elvis Presley, and they acknowledged it. At one point, I was surprised to learn, I don't know if you knew this, Emmanuel, he was mentoring the Beatles and the Rolling Stones at one point in the 60s.
Actively?
Actively, yeah. They were turning to him for help. Paul McCartney apparently has, I'm not much of a Beatles fan, I'm going to be honest. But apparently
Sacrilege on the BBC.
I don't want to start no stuff. I'm just saying, it's not really, it wasn't part of my listening diet.
This is a safe space.
But is there, if you are a listener, there's this, I guess Paul McCartney does a woo himself.
Right, he does do that.
He learned from Little Richard. Yeah.
Oh, and wait. He stole it from Little Richard? Or you're saying actively he just Little Richard taught him how to do it?
Little Richard taught it to him.
Whoa.
Yes.
Okay.
Because he was actively mentoring the Beatles. Jimi Hendrix played backup for Little Richard at one point early in his career.
Wow.
But they were too big of personalities to be on the stage together, so they did have quite a bit of conflict, and that didn't last. But the point of all that is I'm here to tell you that it is a fact at this point that rock and roll began in Southern, Black, and frankly, mostly queer juke joints that in the early 20th century, where this kid, Richard Penniman, found it, developed it, and ultimately took it to the mainstream in the 1950s. And that is the history of rock and roll. But for many, many years, no one acknowledged that fact. even as when I encountered him when I was a kid, in the 80s, he was still at that point considered a flash in the pan. Like,
I was going to say,
this,
I had my music education as a kid in like the early 2000s, and he's almost like this guy that shows up for a little bit, almost as some sort of like musical prophet, and then disappears.
Or a comedic blip, he never ever had the commercial success of the white artists who followed him. And a few years ago, I had the chance to interview a filmmaker, a woman named Lisa Cortez, who made this incredible documentary for HBO about Little Richard. Little Richard, I Am Everything, it's called. Everybody should go look at it. And I learned in talking to her how intentional that erasure was, how he got left out for so many years of the history of rock and roll. It's starting in real time because he was really a threat to white culture in the 50s. I also learned how, as a consequence of that erasure, he really was hurt. After that, this man who had just been so full of joy and inspiration and revolution, he struggled to embrace any of those things about himself. And so I was thinking about this challenging arc of Little Richard's story when I started looking around in the BBC archives for stuff about him because I'm into him. And I found a couple of really remarkable interviews he did with the BBC in August of 1972. These were recorded in just a really pivotal moment in his life story. And I think if we listen to them together, you can start to understand both the incredible inspiration of this man and the horrible tragedy of this man. So that's what I want to do. I want to listen to these two interviews with you. You down?
Listen, let it all hang out, my friend. Let's do it.
All right. Let's start after the break. Welcome back. It's Big Lives. We're talking about Little Richard. And okay, Emmanuel, let me set up what's happening for Little Richard in August of 1972 as he sits for an interview with the BBC. He's in London for a big concert at Wembley Stadium. And, he's been in and out of the limelight, sort of off and on, since the 50s. He got really big in the late 50s, and he's just sort of been coming in and out of public conversation. And he personally sees this show that he's going to be doing in London as a chance to reassert his status as the king of rock and roll.
Right. It's sort of like his big sort of redemption tour. And it's in the UK, home of rock and roll. By the 70s, that's where rock and roll is coming out of.
Right, where all these people that he has taught rock and roll have come. Right. And so he's back to claim his status atop the mountain, and he's pushing ticket sales, right? So he's doing interviews, and the night before the concert, he goes on this late-night BBC show. And it is a time capsule. I mean, the background is warmly lit in tan colors. There's a soft glow, very early 70s. The interviewer is this scrawny British white guy in a paisley shirt, and he's kind of awkward.
Right.
He's leaning on this big grand piano, and Little Richard is sitting at the keys looking every bit the epic diva that he is.
Yeah.
The diamond headband and the big bouffant hair, the makeup. He's got this flowing, flared peach, or maybe it's kind of pinkish two-piece with big square rhinestones on it. He's just doing it all. And the show begins. He starts playing. Right. And he's riffing, and the camera's there, And right from the jump here, though, the interviewer starts trying to talk to Little Richard like he's a has-been, right? Where's he been,
Oy.
But Little Richard is here to insist, I've gone nowhere. I am still the king.
Little Richard, it's now 16 years since you had your first hits.
Oh, yes.
Do you realize that, you must realize that at your performances, now there are people who weren't even alive when you first began recording.
Yes, but I have woke him up now. Everybody that wasn't alive when I started and was gone, I have brought the spirit and put it on them. They have resurrected.
So this is the the vibe of all of his interviews in this period, right? In August 8,
So
1972.
everywhere he goes, he's just being casually disrespected like that.
And he's being like, I'm here, I'm the king, I've been the king, I've woke him up.
Yeah.
You know, he's like simultaneously like celebratory and defensive, you know, at the same time. Like he's got these two things coming. He's trying to be like, I never went anywhere, but I'm offended that you think I went somewhere. You know, so that's generally the vibe. And at one point in this interview, the interviewer asks, you know, Little Richard, just the basics of how he got started.
How did you develop your particular style, your resonance of voice?
Well, you know, I used to be an opera singer. I used to sing opera. You didn't know that?
I didn't
Classical
know.
music?
No, I didn't
know that?
I'm sorry.
Wow.
So you used to go all the way up. Then I started singing rock. I was playing for the church. My grandfather was a preacher, Reverend Penniman. He died. I used to play for him every Sunday morning because he was take up collections about 7 times. You know, just one more penny, just one more quarter. And the more you give him, he still wanted another one. So I used to play Tutti, Frutti, and Long Tall Sally while he be preaching. But he didn't know it.
So let me try to translate some of this because
Please,
first
yeah.
off, I'm not even sure that he ever sang opera. I don't know if that's true or not.
I was going to say, is there some myth-making happening here?
It might be. I can't say he didn't, but he does the most anytime he talks about himself. He calls it, you know, he's Muhammad Ali of music, as he has said. So, you know, he sang a lot in that clip. It must be unpacked. This is the short story of rock and roll, I guess, kind of in there, which passes through opera. And in this particular telling, I don't know if that's true.
Who can say?
He does the most. And who can say?
As someone once told me, you never correct a diva in their stories.
Oh, I think I've heard that somewhere as well. All right, well, I'm not going to correct Richard Penniman, but let me tell you what happened in his life. Richard Penniman, born in Macon, Georgia, 1932. As he says, his grandfather was a preacher. He grew up in church where he played music, and this music deeply influenced him. It was, you know, the raucous sound of music in Pentecostal and Baptist churches in the South in the 30s, right? Like, you have a sense of what I mean. But within that, Little Richard was truly a wild child. He was nicknamed Warhawk at one point because he would interrupt the service trying to sing with he would just be screaming and hollering, right? and so they had to like stop him from singing in church at one point. And then when I spoke to the filmmaker Lisa Cortez, who made this documentary about him that I love, she told me a detail about his childhood that she, for some bizarre reason, left out of her documentary. But he liked to play pranks around town. He was just a troublemaker. For instance, this little boy, would poop in boxes, wrap them up, and leave them as gifts on people's doorsteps. Yes, sir.
That's like more than just like regular childhood pranks.
It is trolling in modern parlance. I would call it also a little bit punk rock, I think, is what I thought when I first heard of it. It's just anarchy. He's in church shouting and screaming. He's like, I'm going to shit on your doorstep and watch you open the
He's
package.
doing a bunch of things that are most definitely the opposite of what the preacher's son is supposed to do. It sounds
what the preacher's son is supposed to be doing. And among those things is he is identifiably queer. He's effeminate, and by the time he's 15, he's kicked out of the house for being too effeminate. What happens to him may surprise people who don't know queer history, but he gets taken in by the owners of a bar called Annie's TikTok, which was a queer bar. It was essentially a queer bar. Like,
Oh, wait, so there are queer bars in Macon, Georgia at this time? I'm just sort of like, that's not a thing I would have thought about.
Right, but there were. I mean, the thing is that there was a vibrant queer scene all over the country, and there always has been. Wherever there are people, there are queers. Macon community is the lesson here. And at this time, you know, what that bar was really was a place for performers. And there were a lot of places like this throughout the South, these juke joints that where Southern Black people are on the edge of society, and on the edge of Southern Black society, are these people who are making music and performing and doing drag and being queer. And so it's not a queer bar in the way we might think of it today, but it is a queer bar in the sense of like a lot of openly transgressive people around gender and sexuality unapologetically hanging out in this space. And that's where young Richard starts to center his life after he gets kicked out of his house. And I will say, as a consequence, this is a very important moment in the history of rock and roll.
Wow. So he basically went to go live, he found community at this queer local bar.
At this queer bar.
Huh.
And it was a place where performers who passed through town, Macon was an important town in general in the history of music. There was a lot of performance there in the South, part of Southern music.
Okay.
So about a year before he got kicked out of his home, when he was 14, he gets kicked out when he's 15. And when he's 14, he's out on the streets selling Coca-Cola, right, in front of the Macon City Auditorium and singing while he's selling it, probably to like gin up sales, right? And one of the performers who's in town overhears him singing. This is a woman named Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
Now, have you heard of Sister Rosetta?
It's okay if not. I don't know. Yeah. Why? Yeah. Tell me about it.
So Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and this is an important aside, is actually, if you can point to one person who is most clearly credited with inventing rock and roll, it is this woman. She was making these nominally gospel records where she introduced electric guitar and drums and is just belting out these raucous lyrics that are nominally about God and stuff.
Yeah.
But you can picture a whole different set of lyrics, right? And her crowd surfing while she's singing. It's absolutely amazing. And the way a musicologist explained it is the idea is that you, starting with her, was that you make a joyful noise until the Spirit enters the room. And once the Holy Spirit is there, you are rocking and rolling. And that is rock and roll. That is the beginning of rock and roll.
Wow.
So here, going back to Little Richard in London in 1972 on his press tour, here's how he describes this idea, the way rock comes out of the church. This is a different interview than the one with the guy in the paisley shirt, but it's also in the BBC.
You said at the beginning of the interview that you created rock and roll from church music.
That's right.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, well, my grandfather was a minister. He had a little church down in Georgia, and I used to play the piano every Sunday. Give me that old time, talking about religion. Give me that old. I used to do that every Sunday. And so when I started singing, when I made Tutti Frutti, wop bop a loo bop a lop bam boom Tutti Frutti, so it was something that the people hadn't been used to. And I took my thing that I had made up in the house and I mixed it with my gospel influence, not the regular gospel, but my gospel influence and my experience, my humiliation, my suffering. See, I was rocking all the time, and then my spirit started rolling, and that's where it came from.
I was rocking all the time, and my spirit started rolling.
I feel like dumb that I've never actually wondered where the term rock and roll comes from until this moment.
I can't say that it literally comes from this, but this is how the musicologists talk about it. This is how these Black people who were doing it then talk about it. Right. So I guess I'm going to say yes, that's where it came from. But the main point here is rock and roll is the Holy Spirit entering the room.
Right.
And so Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who is also queer, discovers Little Richard as an artist playing on the street. She hears him singing. She's impressed by his powerful voice. She invites him to open for her show that very night that she meets him.
Wow.
And that begins Little Richard's journey as a performer, as a paid performer.
I literally just want to note that this is legitimately the plot to A Star Is Born.
Is it really? That's right. Now that I think it sure is. It sure is. See, they stole something else.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
I do wonder how much his beginning to perform at 14 with Sister Rosetta Tharpe is part of him getting kicked out of his house at 15. If it's more than just being gay, but, Back to Annie's TikTok.
Right.
While he's hanging out there, he's been kicked out of his house. He's performing with Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and he's meeting all these performers who are traveling around the South playing really versions of this music they call jump blues.
Jump blues.
Which is like...
Is that literally what it sounds like? Like blues you get up and jump to?
Yeah, exactly. That's well put, Emmanuel. That's exactly it. Like, I don't think I have the musical depth to tell you about jump blues, but I kind of hear it as like a combination of blues and swing. Got it. It's upbeat. It's like boom, boom. And they're playing this, and there's the rock gospel kind of people, and it's just all of this edge of culture stuff where they are inventing things. And little Richard is hanging out in that circle, and he develops his own drag character called Princess Lavon. Princess Lavon, because at the time, again, drag is a big deal in Southern Black culture still. It goes back to the 1800s. They're holding these drag balls. He becomes friends with this jump blues singer who is openly gay, a guy named Billy Wright, and he's a famous jump blues singer, and he's also does a lot of drag, and he encourages Richard. He's like, yo, you got to lean into this makeup and the pompadour and the gowns, really go big with this stuff. And so, and Richard, he loves it, obviously, and he takes the note. In that 1972 interview that I've been talking about, there's this moment where he's talking about his family, and about all his siblings and stuff, and thinking about his history in Macon. Right. And the host is asking him a matter-of-fact set of questions about that, and it just sends Richard into this tear on style that I just really love. Listen to this.
Well, I have a brother. He's a CPA. My two sisters are nurses.
But you're the only person that's in show business.
In show business. I'm the only one. See, because they don't like to dress like I do. I like to put it on.
I had noticed, actually.
I love to put it on. I like to shine. In fact, I think everybody's supposed to do their own thing. This is what you call doing your own thing time.
Do you always dress like that? Or?
Every day. I go to the grocery store like this, and people turn around. When I walked in the airport here in London today, a man dropped his cup of coffee.
I notice you're wearing makeup. Do you wear makeup?
Yes, I do.
All the time?
Yes, you're supposed to wear makeup. Just, just like when you toast your bread, I put sugar in your coffee, you're supposed to add a little touch to it.
Yes, I must remember that.
Yes, God. You're supposed to do it.
Yes, God, you're supposed to do it. Add a little touch of makeup to you. That's what the Lord wanted from you. I love this man. So by the late 40s, young teenage Little Richard had developed his sound. He had developed his style. He was on stage. He knew he wanted to be a star, and he was ready, right? He was ready to be a recording artist. His big break does not come, though, until 1954. And I just love everything about the story of how this happens.
Okay.
So he's working in Macon as a dishwasher. He's feeling discouraged and frustrated. He's thinking maybe this isn't going to work out. He's broke.
Right.
But he does finally get a break. He gets a contract to make a song for a label called Speciality Records.
Okay.
But at the time, they would scout artists and then take them into the studio and develop them, see what can we do. So they send Richard Penniman to New Orleans to work with this renowned development producer, a guy named Robert Bumps Blackwell, right?
Robert Bumps. How did you get that nickname?
Right? Who knows, right? Like, we don't have nicknames anymore like we should, Like, we got to give each other a nickname. Because Robert Bumps Blackwell is the best nickname ever for somebody whose job is to create a bump,
True.
Like,
I got to say, that is not where my mind went in terms of a nickname. Mine went to a more narcotics-related place, but continue.
Well, Bumps Blackwell was one of these guys who was known for developing a song to get it from like, okay, that's what you sing. Let's make this ready for commercial release.
Right.
So it could actually be a hit, right? So he's working with Little Richard, or Richard Penniman at the time. It's not going well. The session is quite lackluster. And Richard is frustrated. At a lunch break, he sits down at a piano and he's just fussing around playing one of his old songs, this filthy, sort of risque, dirty blues song he used to play in the clubs.
Okay.
Blackwell likes it.
Tell me now, in 1956 you had a lot of hits, but before that, what were you doing?
I was a dishwasher. At the Greyhound bus station in my hometown, Macon, Georgia, I had been washing plates for so long I was tired. And I wrote Tutti, Frutti, and good golly, Miss Molly, and bless your soul, I got out of the kitchen.
And this is the song that's going to become Tutti Frutti, that silly, almost thing you will hear in a kid's song now.
Womp bam boom.
Exactly. But the original lyrics for Tutti Frutti, which was developed in his days playing in queer bars and on the Chitlin circuit, the chorus, which we all now know as Tutti Frutti All Rudy, right? Which sounds like gibberish, but is actually slang for all right at the time. Tutti Frutti All Rudy. The original lyrics were Tutti Frutti Good Booty, because this was a song about anal sex.
Oh.
Yes, sir. And the other lyrics included, if it don't fit, don't force it. You can grease it, make it easy.
Wow, that really makes
some lube
Baba
on
Loom Baba Womp Bam Boom have a different meaning in my brain now.
This song, it was about anal sex. I am here to tell you. It was a filthy, raunchy song about anal sex. Bumps Blackwell was like, well, that's not going to work for radio. But it's a great tune.
Right.
So they hired another songwriter that worked for the label to kind of scrub the lyrics and to make it something they could actually put out. They recorded the new version in just 3 takes. So, and it is widely accepted that what they put out in the world became the first mainstream hit song that you could call rock and roll, Tutti Frutti, what they did in that studio. And, you know, there is a version of this story that Little Richard tells in his interview in 1972. And it's great because it's just fun to listen to him talk. It can be a little hard to follow, but here is his quick and dirty version of what I just explained.
How did you get to record in the first place?
I was down there and I was so tired. I was tired. Have you ever seen anybody tired? I was tired, y'all. Lloyd Price had put out a blues hit called Lordy Miss Claudie. And he came through my hometown, Macon, Georgia, in a golden black Cadillac with a towel on the back of it. I thought he was going to roll it down the street, but he didn't. Oh, God. And he came over there to me and he said, now we're going to make this tape and send this little tape up here to Speciality Records. I made the tape, sent it on up to Speciality, and they waited 2 years before they came to see me. Bumps Blackwell, they did it. Then they met me down in New Orleans, Louisiana, wanted me to sing like Ray Charles, and I refused. And when they got down there, he got Tutti Frutti, although he had to clean it up, but he got it.
Wow, Ray Charles was catching strays.
Everybody catches a stray when Little Richard starts talking. There's nobody that doesn't catch a stray because nobody can ever compare. So Tutti Frutti comes out. It's a huge hit, and it's followed by several other big hits, Long Tall Sally, Rip It Up, Ready Teddy. And he is a sensation, particularly among white teenagers, right? Like, they really eat this stuff up. He's playing these raucous shows. There's integrated audiences. He's doing shit like climbing on top of the piano and throwing things out at the fans who are, you know, screaming crazy. Like, it's just a wild scene that he's creating that is new and fresh. And in these 1972 interviews, like, he loves taking us back to that moment, you know, and he's asked a lot, like, and I think maybe because the viewers maybe perhaps like enjoy him doing this, you know, but they keep asking him, what's rock and roll? You know?
Just to kind of get him to talk about it? Because they're like, we want the Little Richard show.
Yeah, give us the Little Richard show. There's one that this is a really great one where it's on this press tour in London.
Yeah.
We don't actually know what show this was or what the interviewer was, but he just does this riff. Just listen to this.
Can I ask you a question, which for the mums who are listening to this program, they'll want to know what rock and roll is.
Rock and roll is the music that heals your spirit, that lifts your soul and take control and knock out the headaches because it rocks it out. Make the liver quiver and the bladder splatter and your knees freeze. That's what rock and roll is. And don't forget, whatever you're doing, wherever you go, don't forget to let it all hang out and keep on rocking. Woo, woo, woo. And they will. I've been doing this a long time, you know, for the black, the white, the red, brown, and the yellow. We're just like the lily, the rose, the sunflower, and the medallion. We're God's bouquet, the children's of love. Keep on rocking, baby. Little Richard, the king of rock and roll. Cassius Clay, a rock and roll Mohammed. Little Richard, oh, oh.
Honestly, it's funny because as he was talking, when he was like, the black, the right, the purple, and the yellow, or whatever it is that he's saying, like, I was like, oh, he does sound like Muhammad Ali, actually.
Absolutely. Like, this is part of Black culture in that era, you know? Like, they both grow out of a signifying culture at a time when we were happy to signify and wordplay was important, you know? And so they were two masters of it. And its other thing about that is he stays selling in these interviews. You know, he is trying to sell tickets to his show.
He's very much like living the always be closing lifestyle. Like, he's definitely like,
that's right.
There's a dance happening in these interviews where definitely the interviewers want Little Richard to put on a show, say stuff like Liver Quiver or Bladder Splatter, which is a bar, and he's happy to give it to him because he's trying to remind people, listen, this is, if you're going to get one thing from me, it's going to be a performance.
It's going to be a performance, and tonight, let it all hang out. Come buy these tickets,
yes.
you know, and watch it happen. And I think it's important to take in for a minute, like, who the audience for all of this was in the 1950s, right?
Right.
This was white kids who were eating this stuff up at a moment when the United States was deeply, deeply interested in restoring the innocence of white youth. We had created the suburbs, right, which were explicitly, through segregation, a place where white young people could hide from the brutality of Jim Crow that created all their privileges and opportunities. That was the purpose of the suburbs. And we had invented the idea of teenagers. This is what blows my mind. It's so wild to think about how recent that concept is. Like, before World War II, teenage wasn't a thing.
Wait, really? I guess I've never thought about that either. It just was not a thing. You were just a young person.
Yeah, well, you worked in factories. You worked on farms. You were a laborer by the time you were a teenager. You were a parent by the time you were a teenager. And it was really a post-war creation, this sort of reclaiming of childhood and innocence that was stolen during the war, right? When all these kids were sent off to die.
Right.
But of course, it was one that was reserved for white people. Like, there weren't black teenagers, you know, but there were white teenagers in the suburbs, and they were supposed to be innocent. And along comes little frickin' Richard, who is this clearly genderqueer man screaming, you know, like these. The Tutti Frutti doesn't sound sexual to us now, but I bet you it did then, right? These sexual things, and he is really an abomination relative to these innocent white suburbs. And so the record executives saw this in real time, and they saw the threat that Little Richard presented. I don't really fully understand this. I think it's because he didn't own the writing credits. Right? The Strong had been scrubbed, so he didn't own the publishing credits, I guess.
Right.
And so they had a bunch of big white artists record Tutti Frutti.
The classic thing that happened to black artists in that day, which is basically they'd record a song and then it would get watered down and kind of lilified on Wright radio by another artist.
Yeah, and I think this might be the origin story of that process.
Oh,
you
like
know?
this is like
I'm not
the
sure,
big
but like
case.
This is like a really big example of it.
And they do that with
Pat
Tutti
Boone
Frutti?
does a version. For Tutti Frutti, Pat Boone does a version. Elvis
Pat
does
Boone
a version.
sings a version of Tutti Frutti.
Boone does a version of Tutti Frutti. Elvis Presley does a version of Tutti Frutti. Both are much larger hits than Little Richard. They both sell way more copies of that than Little Richard ever sold for his version. It's part of what sets Elvis on the road to be the king of rock instead of Little Richard.
I'm trying to even imagine an Elvis version, what that sounds like. Just like Tutti Frutti.
You know, to be honest, I didn't even go look it up. I have so little interest. Like, now that you say it, my curiosity stopped at the words Pat Boone and Elvis Presley. But you're right. I don't know what they sound like. They must be horrible.
It's not even just that it would be horrible. It's just the things that make Tutti Frutti like a fun tune to listen to. Like, literally just the high notes that Little Richard is hitting. Elvis's whole thing is the exact opposite of that.
Physically, he can't sing that way.
Yeah, he's a voice in the basement. So it doesn't work the same.
But I'm here to tell you that at the time, they sold way more versions of this record than Little Richard ever did.
Wow.
And his reaction to this is what I want to talk about next. Because when I listened to these interviews in 1972, despite all the bluster and salesmanship about the concert, you can also hear his just frustration and anger and pain all these years later.
Yeah.
At the way this erasure began.
Little Richard knows that he is a hell of an entertainer today for these kids, because if he wasn't Mick Jagger, Creedence Clearwater Revival, the Beatles, Tom Jones, Elvis Presley, and all these people wouldn't have made it with Little Richard's tune, as Little Richard wasn't what he is, but they want you to feel that you're nothing, but I know that I'm great, the greatest, thank God.
That's got to be so... And I'm just listening to that and just thinking about the performance that he's doing. Like, he's going around town trying to whip up, ticket sales. He's having to, kind of dance for them and be the Little Richard, the most flamboyant, almost probably doing a little bit of a parody of himself, it sounds like. Whilst also at the same time, there's truth behind it, which is you're literally kind of trying to defend and remind people of your legacy. That's got to take. Yeah. That's got to take a lot from you.
And it keeps happening. Yeah. He's constantly being like, oh, woo, 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 I'm Little Richard. And then, the defensiveness comes up,
right.
And he feels hurt. But, I also want to talk about, how he reacted to it in the real time and how he might have kind of help make it worse for himself. So that's next. Welcome back. It's Big Lives. We're talking about Little Richard, and now we're talking about how he reacted to the fact that Elvis Presley and these other white artists who immediately copied his song in Tutti Frutti also immediately started getting the credit for creating the sound of rock and roll.
Right.
So, 1957, he's at the height of his fame. It's 2 years after Tutti Frutti has come out and all those other hits have come out. He's touring Australia. And while he's performing, he looks up into the sky and he sees a bright red fireball. Now, what he was actually looking at was the Sputnik 1 satellite.
Okay. I was like, he was looking at the sun?
He was looking at the Sputnik 1 satellite.
Blind?
But what Little Richard decided he was looking at was God.
Okay.
And he decided that it was a divine sign from God that it was time for him to repent his wild lifestyle. And reportedly, he went to the Sydney Harbor. He took off his jewelry, these expensive diamond rings. He threw them into the harbor. He quit the tour, abandoned the tour, and publicly declared that he was leaving the devil music behind.
Leaving the devil music behind?
Yep.
As in rock and roll, he's leaving it?
All of it. It's the devil's music. He doesn't want anything else to do with it. He's going to go be a minister.
Wow.
Yeah. So in 1972, again, back in London, the host of this late night show asks him about this, and here's how he describes it.
In 1957, 58,
yes.
You retired.
Yes, I did.
And what did you do then?
I went to study religion. It's the Jewish religion, from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday, Sabbath, and, the Passover feast and all. And my people in there now, they keep the Sabbath, 7-day Sabbath.
You're Jewish?
My family.
Yes.
And so I went to school there and I studied theology. And so after I came out of it, I didn't go into it. I wanted to come back and sing for my fans and my friends. I never leave my fans and my friends again because they need me and I need them. We help each other so much.
But why did you drop out in the first place when you were
Well, because I wanted
enormous?
To study and learn about the love of God, and that the black and white, the red, brown, and the yellow, we're just like the lily, the rose, the sunflower, and the medallions. We're God's bouquet, the children of love. And I just wanted to learn about the love of God so we can learn how to help and treat each other.
There was a story that you threw £8,000 worth of rings over Sydney Harbour Bridge.
I did,
Is that
and
true?
I would like to find that fish that got them. I don't know where he went.
What a treasure.
I got to say, first off, Little Richard is not a reliable narrator, and I have no idea what he's talking about with the Judaism piece of it. You know, he was an evangelical Christian.
Oh, so he didn't go to seminary and study Judaism and become Jewish.
He did.
He did.
He went to seminary to study evangelical Christianity.
Oh.
Maybe there's some other part of it. I don't know, but he is famously an unreliable narrator.
Maybe he's just, like an Old Testament Christian.
Like maybe that's what he meant. I do not know, but it is the case that from 1958 forward, he would spend the rest of his life coming in and out of being this flamboyant, rebellious boy that became a rock star,
right,
and being an evangelical Christian who rejects everything about his prior life. Despite what he said in that interview, he had rejected those songs. He had said, this is the devil's music. I don't have anything to do with those songs, Tutti Frutti in particular. It's sexual, and I don't have anything to do with it.
It's so interesting that on the one hand, it makes sense that it's a person who grew up in the church, and it makes sense that he would go back to the church as a safe space, even though it doesn't sound like it was potentially that much of a safe space when he was a kid. He was in tension with it slightly. But I don't know. It's so interesting to me, the takeaway he has from someone stealing his music isn't to be like, oh, this business sucks, or these white people suck. It's to be like, literally, the music itself is devil music. Or maybe that's not mutually exclusive. Maybe it's all just like this whole business is dirty and horrible.
Or what I hear him saying is that I suck, that I am the devil. And that's why I haven't prospered in this space, is because I, Little Richard, this queer, rambunctious person, am sinful in my core.
Right. It's almost like Elvis stealing his music. He sees it as, oh, this is God punishing me.
That's what I hear, because he never really fully claims his sexuality ever in his life, publicly, right? Despite all the stuff we know.
But despite the original song Tutti Frutti being about, it's like he wasn't out.
No, well, and I think not to himself, maybe in some ways, like in the way that we think of it today, he wasn't proud. He got married in 1959. He married a woman named Ernestine Harvin, who he meets while at like an evangelical rally. They make music together.
Okay.
They make a gospel album with Quincy Jones, actually, in 1962. Like I said, he rejected that old music. At one point, he gets kind of anti-gay later in his life in his Christianity. He creates this traveling evangelical team that travels around the country preaching, but he also can't hold it, right? Because then he keeps coming back to the music. So like in the early 60s, so he leaves in 58, early 60s as the sound starts to take over, particularly in the UK with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, he comes back, right? And he starts mentoring them and Jimi Hendrix and so forth. And in these interviews in the 70s, he wants to talk about that. He wants to talk about his time back and what that meant to him. But that didn't hold. He ends up going away again. And he just does this throughout the rest of his life, like coming in and out of the music and coming in and out of being like, I'm a Christian versus I'm a rock and roll star.
It's sad because it's like, on the one hand, what you're telling me is a story about this guy whose whole genre doesn't seem to want to claim him fully, or claims him when it's convenient for them. But it also seems like he didn't want to claim himself. You know what I mean? He's at war with it too.
It's really tragic, and it's unfortunately a sadly common gay story. But so in the 70s, when we're hearing this interview, we're hearing these interviews from the BBC. It's one of his times where he's like tried to come back. So, he's there selling this concert. And one of the things that's weird listening to the tape of this is how he talks about the white people who have become rock and roll stars.
I love Paul. He's beautiful. I love Mick too.
Yeah.
Hello, Cliff Richards. I still love you. He's all right.
He wants to simultaneously claim them as friends, but he does keep showing his hurt. You just keep hearing him be defensive about it and about being forgotten like this.
And now they done labeled it everything. They call it acid rock, anything from giving you the credit, They call it folk rock, country rock, anything to keep from saying rock and roll what Little Richard made.
And there's this other thing that keeps coming up in the interviews in 72, because He's mad about the way the concert has been organized and marketed. So what it is it's actually a festival of rock and roll.
Oh, so it's not even
like
just his comeback concert. It's a bunch of people?
Yeah, it's like Bill Haley and Jerry Lee Lewis and Bo Diddley, like it's an all-day thing.
Oh, kind of like all the like rock and roll pioneers of yesteryear.
Yeah. Like Coachella of yesteryear rock and roll, right?
Right.
But as the show culminates, the way it's set up is first it's Little Richard, and then it's Chuck Berry as the closer.
Oh, so he's towards the end. He's a big name, but he's not the biggest name, literally
He's
on
not
the call sign.
That's right. Little Richard thinks he should be the headliner.
Right.
And he is very, very upset that they have instead sold it as Chuck Berry with the headliner. Here he is, like, really talking about this on the 1972 late night show.
I understand there's been a little friction between who is going to be on the top of the bill, you or Chuck Berry.
Oh, I'm going to fix him. I am going to fix him.
I thought he was your friend.
He is my friend, but I'm going to fix him. They made him the star of the thing, and my contract said that I was the star. I am going to fix him. The Chuck Berry, I call him Blackberry. My mama used to make blackberry wine. I am going to fix Chuck Berry. I am going to upset his nerve and let him know that I am the king of rock and roll, the undisputed king, and can't nothing take my throne. I am going to show him that he is from the valley and not from the mountain. Chuck Berry know that I was a star, been a star all my life. He can't close no show behind me. How can't he have the nerve, the audacity to walk on? I'm Little Richard. Chuck Berry, they built him over me all these years, 23 years in show business. I'm the creator, the originator, the emancipator. I am the one, and when you come out, I'm going to fix Chuck Berry.
How are you
His
gonna fix
Blackberry
him?
will be mashed.
How are you going to fix him?
I am going to shake his nerve. He can close the show, but when I get through, it's going to be closed anyhow. And that's the truth.
See?
That's right.
Like, you hear in his voice, there's like a change where it's like he's half joking, and then actually, no, he's dead serious, like 23 years.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, Little Richard's not getting the credit for rock and roll. Were people giving it to Chuck Berry?
Sure, everybody. Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, all these people, the Beatles, the Stones, anybody but Little Richard. And some of that was the whitewashing that happened right at the beginning.
Right.
And some of that is because Little Richard, in hating himself, took himself out of the conversation.
Right, he stepped away.
He stepped away and he kept doing it. When he came back in the 60s, and that could have been a time, but then he stepped away again, and now he's back in the early 70s, and he's trying to reclaim it. And I mean, throughout every one of these interviews in 72 where he's selling this concert, this happens, where he's performing and all that fun tape that we heard, and then like the other people who are thought of by that point as the titans of rock and roll come up, and he claims them. They're my friends. I like them. And I think they probably were, like they didn't reject him, and then it turns where you hear this real bitterness and frustration, which, to be clear, I get. I would be hot. You wouldn't be able to have me out there.
Right.
So he does the show the following night after that interview. Is the next night of that concert.
And how does it? I feel nervous. How does it go?
Well, Chuck Berry does in fact act as the headliner.
Okay.
The crowd does not leave after Little Richard does his opening set. And it's just kind of a bust.
A bust in what way? Like his performance isn't that great?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen it, but apparently the performance was uneven. And at one point he stopped singing. There was some hiccups, and there was a concert film that came after it, and that was well received. It had sort of been edited, and apparently, like, he did better in that. But this was supposed to be his reclaiming of the throne, and that is not what happened in that concert.
Right.
So he does this for a little bit longer, and then by 1977, he quits again, and he returns to evangelism. He sells Bibles. And it's not till the late 80s when they create the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and that he starts to be recognized as this titan that he was. He gets the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Grammys in 93, that kind of thing. But I think he was lost to history as the just anarchic cultural disruption that he was. He changed the course of the 20th century with what he brought. And even when we call him the king of rock and roll, I don't think that's how we remember him.
Yeah.
And he died in 2020 at the age of 87 from bone cancer.
Wait, he only died in 2020?
Yeah. He lived a long time.
I don't think I really internalized that. And then that's the thing, honestly, it's like this whole time we've been talking about him, it's like he's kind of cast in amber in the 50s and 60s, but it's Tutti Frutti when you listen to it, and that music sounds like so of a period where it's sort of like, I know it's before Motown, but it almost, in some of its ways, sounds kind of like pre-Ray Charles, even though it's not. And so I don't know, that's kind of wild that he was only 87 in 2020, which means he spent most of his adult life, actually, in this kind of musical limbo and exile.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he was a teenager when he was 14 when he first found the music. And he was very young when Tutti in the 50s. And he lost it. And, it's also like he continues to pop up in the culture. Yeah. One of my favorite things I encourage everybody to go do is to, if you aren't someone who has already watched Pee Wee Herman's Christmas special from the late 80s.
Right.
Which is, we ought to do an episode on that alone. It is one of the greatest pieces of cultural relics of history. It's jam-packed with just absurd celebrities showing up on Pee Wee Herman's at Pee Wee's Playhouse for Christmas.
Right.
And Little Richard is one of them. There's this cutaway scene where he's out being Little Richard, ice skating around. And I remember being like, oh, who's that guy? When I was a kid and saw that. But he pops up in these weird ways in the culture, but he's never back in the mainstream after the 50s.
Wow. That's wild. When I think about some of these careers, it's like music is, at the time that he was making music, is changing so quickly. You've gone from like jazz to swing to bebop to blues to jump blues to rock and roll, whatever, in a short period of time. But there are people in his contemporary world who are trying to move along with those. Like, and he just never did that. Like, there's not like a Little Richard random attempt at a more poppy album or something.
Right. He doesn't come in and figure out how to introduce synth.
Right.
There's none of that for Little Richard. He just goes to God and curls up in a ball of self-hate.
And here's the other thing. All these people that he taught and helped, like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, all these people, when he's doing that tour in the 70s, are they kind of coming out and like
where are
advocating for him? Like what's their relationship with
I don't know that there's any relationship with him, but it is a good point. Where have y'all been? All these people who grew out of him, I mean, I think part of what got him re-acknowledged as the king of rock and roll when it finally happened was, in fact, all of these rock stars who say, Little Richard is the big bang of this music. But in real time, were they with him? I don't know. That's a good question. Where were y'all? But, would he allow them to be around too? I just don't know.
Right. I feel like we've talked about Little Richard insofar as he's trying to get recognition from that white suburban teenager crowd who grew up and became adults. How did Black people view Little Richard?
I mean, these were integrated audiences. So I think Black people walked the same path that everybody else did of being introduced to this music, loving it, being ready for more of it, and wondering where he went.
Right.
I mean, the counterfactual is what would have happened had he kept performing.
Right.
Right.
And that we just don't really...
He kept going and kept making music. What would have happened? Would he have developed the Black audience that kept him safe? Would he become part of Motown?
Right.
We just don't know.
Yeah, we just won't know.
So that is the story of Little Richard. Thank you for going on that journey for me.
Thanks for taking me on.
Who you got for me next week?
Okay, so next, I'm going to play you a couple clips here. I'll just play you the first one.
On soap operas, you're required to feel big and feel big often. It's very frustrating, too, because you're working with writing that's not necessarily fantastic, and you're working in a medium that's all about speaking your subtext, which is, as an actor, very a very, very heinous thing to do.
I have no idea who that is. And it's soap opera. Like,
Yeah. Listen.
are we going to talk about a soap star?
We're definitely going to talk about a star. And we're definitely going to talk about a person who's inhabited so many different worlds that I didn't even know about. I'm just going to play you another clip.
It's a very old-fashioned movie. It's a movie that's kind of about love in the movies as opposed to love in life, you know? It's a very, like you're saying, a very sentimental movie and very, very sweet, hugely sweet.
Nope.
Nothing.
I got nothing. She's a white lady, I can say that.
Important to who this woman is. One more.
Harry Met Sally, of course, is this famous orgasm scene. Are you very sick of it being referred to?
No.
Got it.
I was just telling somebody what I remember was that Rob Reiner, the director, had a habit of, in every scene, standing next to the camera and kind of mouthing the words along with you. So he did that in that scene as well.
R.I.P. Rob Reiner.
Yeah.
I literally know nothing about this person.
All right.
I know who it is, but I know zero beyond Harry Met Sally about this person. So,
Well, we'll get into it next time.
Big Lives is a production of BBC Studios and Pushkin Industries. It's hosted by me, Kai Wright, and Emmanuel Dzotsi. From BBC Studios, our producer is Emma Wetherill. Our archive producer is Samira Chowdhury. Executive producer is Annie Brown. The sound designer is Melvin Rickaby. Production coordinator is Galen Davis Connolly. And production manager is Mabel Finnegan Wright. Our apprentice is Amy Woods. From Pushkin Industries, our executive producer is Constanza Gallardo. Producer Daphne Chen, legal advisor Jake Flanagan, and marketing by Morgan Ratner and Jordan McMillan.